Let's jump right into this. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating clash right at the very edge of modern technology. We are looking at that highly complex, super high-stakes intersection where national security smashes right into the rapid advancement of frontier AI. It's an incredible story about global competition, massive leaps in capability, and a major regulatory framework that just completely fell apart at the 11th hour.
To really grasp how tense this situation got, picture this. It's the afternoon of May 21st, 2026. The White House had a signing ceremony ready to go for a massive executive order on AI and cybersecurity. Major tech executives were invited, the stage was set, and then it was abruptly canceled. And I mean canceled literally just hours before it was supposed to happen. When explaining the sudden pivot to reporters in the Oval Office, President Trump put it pretty plainly. He said, "We're leading China, we're leading everybody, and I don't want to do anything that gets in the way of that lead." That quote right there, that is the absolute core tension we are exploring today.
Okay, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll cover the canceled AI order, the frontier cyber threat, the pre-release review debate, competitive logic versus security, the shrinking security infrastructure, and finally, the global governance deficit.
Section 1. The Canceled AI Order. Let's look at exactly how this timeline played out.
So, how did we get to a last-minute cancellation? Well, 2026 was essentially a watershed moment for the industry. We saw the deployment of incredibly capable AI models, specifically OpenAI's GPT 5.5 Cyber and Anthropic's Mythos. And let's be clear, these weren't just standard software updates. They represented a massive material leap in capabilities. As the government scrambled to formulate a response, this proposed executive order was postponed multiple times. The pressure just kept building and building until May 21st, when the whole thing was pulled right before the ink hit the paper. Section 2. The Frontier Cyber Threat. What was the government actually trying to govern here? Let's dive into what this proposed framework actually looked like. The most crucial takeaway? It was completely voluntary. The entire thing relied on the cooperative disposition of the AI companies. It basically had two main pillars. First, setting up a voluntary clearinghouse to share threat intelligence across federal agencies. And second, which was way more controversial, a 90-day pre-release window. This would give the government and critical infrastructure operators, like finance and energy sectors, early access to test these advanced models before they went public. And here is the truly wild part about all this. It wasn't some external government watchdog sounding the alarm. Nope, the AI developers themselves, Anthropic and OpenAI, ran their own self-assessments and realized their new models were crossing entirely new thresholds for cyber attack support. They were actually the ones who proactively took this reality straight to the National Cyber Director. Section 3. The pre-release review debate. This is where the whole agreement really hit a wall. The core friction basically came down to the timeline. The government pushed hard for that 90-day window to thoroughly hunt for security vulnerabilities, but the tech industry, they heavily preferred a 14-day window. And this wasn't just some minor scheduling disagreement. It was a fundamental battle over deployment velocity. Look at it from their perspective. In a fiercely competitive market, sitting on a finished product for 3 whole months feels like an absolute eternity. But the fracture wasn't just the government versus Silicon Valley. There was a massive structural split right down the middle of the governing coalition itself. On one side, you had MAGA security hawks arguing that AI is essentially dual-use technology, like weapons-capable tech, and absolutely demands mandatory government review. On the other side, innovation allies and the tech industry were adamant about keeping frameworks voluntary and timelines short to maintain their momentum. The drafted order was basically a compromise that, in the end, left nobody happy. Section 4, Competitive Logic versus Security. Why did the administration pull the plug?
To really understand the cancellation, we have to talk about competitive logic. This is the underlying philosophy driving the administration's policy. It's the principle that if a security measure imposes costs or delays or hurdles on American AI developers, it is inherently unsustainable so long as foreign rivals aren't playing by those same rules. It views technological supremacy strictly as a zero-sum game.
This whole logic rests on one specific geopolitical argument. If the U.S. government forces a 90-day speed bump onto American developers, it structurally hands an advantage to the Chinese AI ecosystem, which operates without those equivalent constraints. The idea is you can't win a sprint if you're the only one wearing weighted shoes. Of course, prioritizing that speed doesn't actually mitigate the very real security risks those models pose once they're out in the wild.
Section 5. The shrinking security infrastructure. Let's look at a massive, practical complication here.
Let's just play devil's advocate for a second.
Say the 90-day review order had been signed. Who was going to do the reviewing? The main agency tasked with assessing AI cyber threats is CISA. But here's the kicker. Since January 2025, CISA has lost roughly 33% of its workforce. A full third of the agency supposed to be safeguarding infrastructure from these exact threats is just gone. To put a dollar amount on that, we're talking about a staggering $500 million budget reduction to CISA. That completely gutted the precise departments needed to pull off this AI review framework. Things like stakeholder engagement, regional advising, coordinating with the private sector. So it really begs the question, even if the government somehow mandated a 90-day review, who is realistically left in the building to execute it? Section 6, the global governance deficit. So where does this leave the rest of the world? Without this U.S. executive order, we're basically looking at a massive global void. The European Union's AI Act, it doesn't specifically target this new cyber attack capability threshold. The UK is explicitly less prescriptive and has zero equivalent mechanism in place. And if you zoom out to the multilateral level, like the UN or the G7, there's currently absolutely nothing addressing this specific high-level danger.
So what is the key takeaway for us? It's the immediate reality of what's at stake. These models, Mythos and GPT 5.5 Cyber, they aren't theoretical. They are deployed right now. They're globally accessible to developers, sure, but also to criminals and state-sponsored threat actors. That cyber assisting threshold they crossed, that's no longer the ceiling. That is the new floor for the next generation of AI being built right now in a totally ungoverned space. Which leaves us staring down this final, incredibly pressing question. If any regulation on American AI is automatically viewed as handing an advantage to our rivals, will competitive logic just indefinitely stall the governance of cyber-capable AI? The framework is dead, the technology is accelerating faster than ever, and the whole world is watching to see who, if anyone, is going to step up and manage the risk. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next one.